10 years ago, Daniel Carver buried his secrets in a quiet Virginia suburb. But when a stranger's shadow crossed his doorstep, would his perfect life unravel into murder? Hey, don't forget to like, please subscribe for more shocking crime stories, and hit the bell icon. The darkest truth are yet to come. In the summer of 2015, the quiet streets of Willow Creek, Virginia, hummed with the rhythm of suburban life. Kids on bikes, sprinklers hissing, and the distant hum of lawnmowers. But on a humid July evening, a single gunshot shattered that calm, echoing through the cul-de-sacs and leaving a community frozen in disbelief. At the heart of this tragedy stood Daniel Carver, a 47-year-old real estate developer with a smile that closed million-dollar deals, and his wife, Evelyn, a 42-year-old former nurse turned homemaker whose warmth lit up every room. Next door lived the Warrens, widowed Ellen and her 20-year-old son Caleb, a quiet college junior home for the summer. No one could have imagined these lives would collide in a storm of passion and violence that would end in murder. Daniel Carver was a man who thrived on control. Born to a factory worker in Ohio, he'd built his empire from nothing, his ambition carving a path through late nights and ruthless negotiations. By his mid-30s, he was a name in Virginia's real estate scene, his developments dotting the state's skyline. His colleagues admired his precision, every contract airtight, every handshake calculated. Evelyn, on the other hand, was his counterpoint. Raised in a small coastal town, she'd grown up with salt air and dreams of healing others. She'd been a trauma nurse for a decade, her steady hands saving lives in chaotic ERs. But when she met Daniel at a hospital fundraiser in 2001, his drive and quiet confidence drew her in. He was her anchor. She was his light. They married in a sunlit ceremony 2 years later, their love the kind that turned heads. The early years were golden. Daniel's career soared, his developments earning awards, while Evelyn embraced her role as the perfect wife. She hosted charity galas, her laughter filling their sprawling Willow Creek home, and taught part-time at a community wellness center, leading mindfulness classes that drew a loyal following. Their life seemed flawless. A 4-bedroom colonial, a gleaming SUV, and a social calendar packed with influence. But beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Daniel's work consumed him, his phone buzzing with emails long after midnight. Evelyn, nearing her 40s, felt a quiet ache. The wellness classes that once sparked joy now felt routine, and the couple's dream of children had faded after years of failed treatments. By 2015, their marriage was a polished facade, smiles for the neighbors, silence at home. As Evelyn poured wine alone one June night, a shadow moved past her window. Was someone watching her, or was it just the weight of her unspoken loneliness? Across the hedge lived Ellen Warren, a soft-spoken librarian who'd moved to Willow Creek in 2010, after her husband, a local doctor, died of a heart attack. Ellen kept to herself, her evenings spent with novels and a meticulously tended rose garden. Her son Caleb was her opposite, lanky, reserved, with a knack for fixing things. At 16, he'd started helping neighbors with odd jobs, from repairing fences to rebooting routers. Daniel had taken a shine to him back then, paying him to maintain their lawn and even mentoring him through college applications. By 2015, Caleb was a junior studying engineering, his quiet demeanor masking a sharp mind. He'd come home that summer to keep Ellen company, worried about her growing isolation. Evelyn and Caleb's paths crossed more often than anyone noticed. It started innocently, a wave as he trimmed the hedges, a quick chat when she brought Ellen homemade scones. But in early June, during one of Willow Creek's block parties, something shifted. Daniel was deep in conversation with a client, his voice booming over the grill, while Evelyn felt invisible in the crowd. She slipped away to the community pavilion to catch her breath, and Caleb, escaping the noise, joined her. They laughed about the party's chaos, their shoulders brushing as they sat on a bench. The air crackled with something unspoken. Evelyn, her heart racing, excused herself. But the moment lingered. When Caleb knocked on Evelyn's door the next day, offering to fix her laptop, why did her hand tremble as she let him in? Over the next weeks, their encounters grew deliberate. Evelyn asked Caleb to help with small tasks, hanging a shelf, troubleshooting her Wi-Fi. Each visit stretched longer, their conversations veering from polite to personal. She spoke of her nursing days, her voice softening with nostalgia. He shared his dreams of designing sustainable buildings, his eyes bright with ambition. The age gap, 22 years, faded in the warmth of their connection. Evelyn felt seen for the first time in years. Caleb was drawn to her grace and quiet strength. They were careful, meeting when Daniel was at meetings or Ellen was at the library. But Willow Creek was small, and eyes were everywhere. Their first kiss was a stolen moment in late June. Caleb had been helping Evelyn rearrange her home office when a sudden rain trapped them inside. As thunder rolled, she looked at him, her breath catching. Before she could stop herself, she leaned in. The kiss was electric, a mix of guilt and exhilaration. From there, the affair ignited. They met in quiet corners, a park bench after dusk, the back of a coffee shop, even Evelyn's home when Daniel was away. Each encounter was a risk, but the thrill drowned out the fear. Evelyn rediscovered a version of herself she'd buried. Caleb was captivated by her intensity. They were reckless, blind to the consequences. When a neighbor's dog barked as Caleb slipped out of Evelyn's back door, did anyone see him? Or worse, suspect? By mid-July, the strain of secrecy was fraying them. Evelyn lied effortlessly to Daniel, her excuses polished but hollow. Caleb wrestled with guilt, knowing Daniel had been a mentor. Close calls piled up, a neighbor's curious glance, Ellen, mentioning Evelyn's name too casually. Yet they couldn't stop. On July 14, 2015, Daniel announced he'd be late, a zoning meeting running long. Evelyn texted Caleb, her pulse racing, inviting him over. Caleb, torn but unable to resist, agreed. He arrived at 3 p.m., the summer heat heavy. Evelyn greeted him with a nervous smile, her eyes searching his. They barely spoke before falling into each other's arms, the world fading away. Across town, Daniel sat in his office, his jaw tight. The zoning meeting had been canceled, a rare stroke of luck. He decided to surprise Evelyn, maybe take her to dinner. It was a chance to bridge the gap he'd felt growing between them. At 3:45 p.m., he pulled into their driveway, his mood lifting. He noticed Caleb's bike propped against the Warrens' garage but thought nothing of it. Probably helping Ellen. Unlocking the front door, he stepped inside. The house was still, but a glass of wine on the counter caught his eye. Evelyn rarely drank this early. Then he heard it, a faint creak from upstairs. As Daniel climbed the stairs, his hand gripping the rail, what would he find behind the bedroom door? His heart pounded as he reached the landing. The creak became a muffled voice, then a gasp. Pushing open the bedroom door, Daniel froze. Evelyn, his wife of 12 years, was tangled in the sheets with Caleb, the kid he'd trusted. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. With a guttural yell, Daniel lunged, yanking Caleb from the bed. Evelyn screamed, scrambling to cover herself, but Daniel's rage was a wildfire. Fists flew, Daniel's connecting with Caleb's cheek, Caleb shoving back in panic. They crashed into a nightstand, a lamp shattering. In the chaos, Daniel's hand closed around a heavy brass paperweight. His vision blurred with fury, he swung. A sickening crack silenced the room. Caleb crumpled, blood seeping onto the hardwood. Evelyn's scream tore through the haze, her hands shaking as she knelt beside him. Daniel stood, the paperweight slipping from his grip, his face a mask of shock. Outside, thunder rumbled, and in the distance, a siren wailed. Willow Creek would never be the same. The air in the Carver home was thick with dread as Caleb Warren lay motionless on the bedroom floor, blood pooling beneath his head. Evelyn's screams echoed, her hands trembling as she pressed a towel to his wound, begging him to hold on. Daniel stood frozen, the brass paperweight at his feet, his rage replaced by a hollow panic. The distant wail of sirens grew louder, slicing through the humid July afternoon of 2015. Willow Creek, Virginia, a suburb where secrets were buried under manicured lawns, was about to face a reckoning. What had started as a stolen kiss between Evelyn Carver and her neighbor's son had spiraled into a tragedy that would unravel lives. But as police lights flashed through the windows, a deeper question loomed. Was this the end of the story, or just the beginning? The first officers burst through the front door, their radios crackling. "Hands where we can see them," one shouted, his gun drawn. Daniel raised his blood-streaked palms, his face pale, while Evelyn, sobbing, cradled Caleb's head. Paramedics pushed past, their movement swift but grim. Caleb's pulse was faint, his breathing shallow. As they loaded him onto a stretcher, Detective Laura Hensley arrived, her sharp eyes scanning the chaos. A 15-year veteran of the Willow Creek PD, she'd seen her share of domestic disputes, but the scene before her, a respected developer, a beloved homemaker, and a college kid fighting for his life, felt different. Something darker simmered beneath the surface. Evelyn was escorted to the living room, her robe clutched tightly, tears streaking her face. Daniel was cuffed and led to a squad car, his silence deafening. Neighbors gathered beyond the police tape, their whispers sharp with shock. Ellen Warren, Caleb's mother, arrived just as the ambulance sped off. Her knees buckled when an officer told her Caleb was critical. "My boy," she gasped, clutching a neighbor's arm. Laura Hensley watched it all, her notepad filling with questions. Why was Caleb in the Carver's bedroom? What had snapped in Daniel, a man known for his composure? And why did Evelyn's eyes flicker with something beyond grief? Guilt, perhaps, as Laura stepped into the bedroom. She noticed a crumpled note half hidden under the bed. Would it hold the key to what really happened? The hospital was a blur of white coats and antiseptic. Caleb was rushed into surgery, his skull fractured, brain swelling. Ellen sat in the waiting room, her rosary beads clicking, her face etched with fear. Across town, Laura began interrogating Daniel at the station. He sat rigid, his tailored shirt stained with sweat and blood. "I didn't mean to hurt him," he said finally, his voice low. "I came home early. I saw them together." Laura leaned forward, her pen pausing. "Together how?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "In my bed. My wife and that kid." His words were clipped, but his eyes betrayed a storm. Betrayal, shame, fury. Laura pressed for details, but Daniel clammed up, his lawyer already en route. Evelyn's interview was different. In a sterile room, she sat hunched, her hands twisting a tissue. "It was a mistake," she whispered. "Caleb and I, it wasn't planned." Her voice broke as she described the affair. Weeks of stolen moments fueled by her loneliness and Caleb's quiet admiration. Daniel was never home. I felt invisible. Laura listened, her expression neutral, but her mind raced. Evelyn's story explained the motive, but something felt off. Why had Evelyn invited Caleb over that day, knowing the risks? And why did her tears seem rehearsed, like a performance for an audience of one? When Laura asked Evelyn about a text she'd sent Caleb that morning, Evelyn's face paled. What was she hiding in those messages? Forensics teams swarmed the Carver home, dusting for prints, bagging the paperweight, and photographing the overturned furniture. A tech found the note Laura had spotted, a torn scrap of paper with "Meet me at 3" scrawled in Evelyn's handwriting. It was bagged as evidence, its significance unclear. Neighbors' statements painted a complex picture. One recalled seeing Caleb's bike at the Carvers multiple times that summer, always when Daniel's car was gone. Another mentioned Evelyn's recent mood, distracted, almost secretive at her wellness classes. Ellen, questioned gently at the hospital, spoke of Caleb's devotion to her but admitted he'd been distant lately, his phone always buzzing. "I thought it was school," she said, her voice hollow. By 10 p.m., the hospital delivered devastating news. Caleb Warren was dead. The surgery couldn't stop the bleeding in his brain. Ellen collapsed, her sobs echoing down the hall. At the station, Laura broke the news to Daniel, whose face crumpled. "I didn't mean for this," he muttered. But Laura's gaze hardened. The charge shifted to second-degree murder. Evelyn, informed separately, let out a wail, but Laura noticed her hands, steady, no longer trembling. Was it shock or something colder? The case was building, but Willow Creek buzzed with rumors. Some called Daniel a monster, Others pitied. Him, betrayed by his wife. Evelyn's reputation unraveled, her warmth now seen as a mask. As Laura reviewed Caleb's phone, a deleted voicemail from Evelyn popped up. What did it say and why had she tried to erase it? The investigation deepened over the next days. Caleb's phone revealed a string of texts with Evelyn, flirtatious, at first then desperate. We have to stop, Caleb had written a week before. This is wrong. Evelyn's replies were pleading. Just one more time. The voicemail recovered by text was chilling. Caleb, come today. I need you, Evelyn's voice said, a tremor in her tone. Laura played it again, her gut twisting. Was Evelyn luring Caleb into a trap, or was it a lover's plea? Daniel's colleagues offered insight into his stress. Deals falling through, late nights at the office. He was stretched thin, one said, but violent never. Evelyn's wellness students described her as magnetic but distant lately, her classes less inspiring. Laura visited the Carver home again, standing in the bedroom where it all unfolded. The bloodstain lingered, a dark reminder. She found a photo. On the dresser, Daniel and Evelyn at their wedding, beaming. What had broken them? Digging deeper, Laura learned of their fertility struggles, a silent wound that had driven a wedge between them. Evelyn's affair seemed less about Caleb and more about reclaiming a lost spark. But Caleb's role puzzled Laura. Why risk so much for a woman twice his age? A search of his dorm room turned up a journal, its pages filled with sketches of buildings, and a single line. She makes me feel alive, but I'm drowning. When Laura showed Ellen the journal, a name caught her eye. Not Evelyn's, but Clara. Who was Clara, and what did she know? Clara Bennett was a name Laura hadn't expected. A records check revealed she was a 45-year-old divorcee living on the edge of Willow Creek, a former nurse who'd worked with Evelyn years ago. Laura tracked her down at a small apartment where Clara greeted her with wary eyes. I haven't seen Evelyn in ages, she said, but her fingers twitched. Pressed, Clara admitted she'd met Caleb at a coffee shop in June, introduced by Evelyn. He seemed troubled, she said. Kept talking about guilt, wanting to fix things. Laura's pulse quickened. Had Caleb confided in Clara about the affair? And why had Evelyn brought them together? Clara's story raised more questions. She claimed Evelyn had called her weeks before the murder, asking cryptic questions about starting over. Laura sensed Clara was holding back, her answers too rehearsed. A search of Clara's phone showed a single call from Evelyn the day before Caleb's death, 3 minutes long. What had they discussed? Back at the station, Laura pieced together a theory. Evelyn's affair wasn't just reckless passion. There was intent, a plan unraveling. But whose? Daniel's rage seemed spontaneous, but Evelyn's actions felt calculated. And Clara, friend or accomplice? As Laura left Clara's apartment, she spotted a familiar car parked nearby. Daniel's, lawyer. Why was he watching Clara? The trial loomed, set for January 2016, and Willow Creek braced for answers. Daniel's lawyer, a slick defense attorney named Mark Vaughn, built a case on betrayal, painting Daniel as a man pushed past breaking. Evelyn, shunned by neighbors, moved to a motel, her life in tatters. Ellen, grieving Caleb, hired a private investigator, convinced there was more to the story. Laura, meanwhile, dug into Clara's past, uncovering a link, a malpractice lawsuit from 2008, where Clara and Evelyn had been named. The case was dropped, but the records hinted at a falling out. Had old wounds resurfaced? On a cold December night, Laura sat at her desk, the case file spread before her. The note, the voicemail, Clara's name, they all pointed to a truth just out of reach. Daniel's guilt was clear, but Evelyn's role was murkier. Was she a heartbroken wife or a mastermind? And what did Clara know that could blow the case? Wide open? As snow fell outside, Laura's phone buzzed with a tip. A witness had seen Evelyn and Clara together the morning of the murder. The pieces were falling into place, but the puzzle was far from complete. January 2016 draped Willow Creek, Virginia, in a gray chill, the kind that seeped into bones and hearts alike. The trial of Daniel Carver, accused of murdering 20-year-old Caleb Warren, loomed over the suburb like a storm cloud. The community, once bound by backyard barbecues, now whispered in fractured groups, some vilifying Daniel for his rage, others scorning Evelyn for her affair. Detective Laura Hensley, piecing together the final threads of the case, felt the weight of a truth, still hidden. Evelyn's cryptic calls to Clara Bennett, the crumpled note, and a witness's sighting of them together hours before Caleb's death pointed to a deeper conspiracy. As the courthouse doors swung open, one question burned. Would the truth save anyone or destroy them all? The trial began on a frigid Monday. The Willow Creek courthouse packed with reporters and locals. Prosecuting attorney Rachel Torres, a rising star with a knack for storytelling, opened with a damning portrait of Daniel, a man whose control shattered into violence, killing a young man who trusted him. This wasn't an accident, she declared, her voice steady. Daniel Carver chose to swing that paperweight. Defense attorney Mark Vaughn countered with a tale of betrayal, painting Daniel as a husband pushed beyond reason by Evelyn's infidelity. He lost everything in that moment, Vaughn said, his eyes sweeping the jury. The stage was set, but Laura, seated in the gallery, sensed the real story lay elsewhere. Evelyn's testimony was the trial's first bombshell. Taking the stand, her face pale but composed, she recounted the affair with Caleb, its spark at the block party, its reckless escalation. "I was lost," she said, her voice cracking. Daniel was gone, emotionally, physically. Caleb saw me. Her words stirred murmurs, but under Torres's cross-examination, cracks appeared. Torres held up the note. "Meet me at 3, and demanded, "Did you plan for Daniel to find you?" Evelyn's eyes darted away. "No," she whispered, but her hesitation hung heavy. Laura scribbled in her notepad, "She's protecting someone." The courtroom buzzed, sensing a shift. As Evelyn stepped down, a juror noticed a woman in the back row, Clara Bennett, staring intently. Why was she there, uncalled as a witness? Ellen Warren's testimony gutted the room. Caleb's mother, her face carved with grief, spoke of her son's kindness, his dreams of building eco-friendly homes. "He was my anchor," she said, clutching a photo of Caleb at graduation. When asked about Evelyn, Ellen's voice hardened. "She used him. He was just a boy." The jury shifted, some wiping tears. Laura watched Ellen closely, noting her mention of a private investigator. Ellen's PI had uncovered Clara's name in Caleb's journal, linking her to Evelyn. Laura's gut screamed, Clara was the key. But why was Mark Vaughn, Daniel's lawyer, meeting her in secret? Forensics took center stage next. The medical examiner detailed Caleb's injury, a single blow to the temple fatal due to brain hemorrhage. The brass paperweight, Torres argued, was wielded with intent. Vaughn countered that Daniel's rage, temporary insanity, gripped the jury. But Laura's focus was elsewhere. She'd tracked down Clara's old malpractice lawsuit, where she and Evelyn were accused of negligence in a patient's death in 2008. The case was dismissed, but co-workers described a bitter fallout. Evelyn blaming Clara for the incident, Clara vowing revenge. Had Clara manipulated Evelyn's loneliness, planting seeds of rebellion? During a recess, Laura overheard Vaughn on a call saying, "Clara, stay quiet, or we're done." What deal had they struck? Laura confronted Clara at her apartment that night. Clara, chain-smoking, was cagey. "I told you I barely knew Caleb," she snapped. But when Laura mentioned the 2008 lawsuit, Clara's facade cracked. "Evelyn ruined my career," she spat. "She let me take the fall." Pressed about the call with Evelyn the day before Caleb's death, Clara faltered. She asked if I'd kept her secret, she said. "What secret?" Laura demanded. Clara clammed up, but her fear was palpable. Laura left with a theory. Clara had goaded Evelyn into the affair, knowing Daniel's temper, orchestrating a collision, but proving it was another matter. The trial's turning point came when Ellen's PI testified. He'd found a deleted email from Clara to Evelyn, sent weeks before the murder. He'll never let you go. Make him see you. The courtroom erupted. Torres seized it, arguing Clara had manipulated Evelyn, fueling her desperation. Vaughn scrambled, claiming the email was vague, but the jury was swayed. Daniel, against Vaughn's advice, took the stand. His voice shook as he described finding Evelyn and Caleb. "I saw red," he said. "I didn't mean to kill him." His remorse felt raw, but Torres tore into him, highlighting his control in every other aspect of life. "You chose violence," she said. Daniel had no reply. As Daniel left the stand, Evelyn whispered something to her lawyer. Was she about to change her story? The final witness was unexpected. Clara, subpoenaed at the last minute. Under oath, she unraveled. Torres pressed her on the email, the lawsuit, and her meetings with Vaughn. Clara's voice trembled. "Evelyn wanted out," she said. "I told her to push Daniel, to make him jealous. I didn't know he'd..." She broke down, admitting she'd fed Evelyn's resentment, hoping Daniel would spiral. "I wanted her to hurt like I did." The revelation stunned the court. Evelyn in the gallery buried her face in her hands. Laura saw it clearly now. Clara's revenge had used Caleb as collateral, destroying 3 lives. Closing arguments sealed the case. Torres painted a web of betrayal. Clara's manipulation, Evelyn's weakness, Daniel's rage. Vaughn pleaded for mercy, citing Daniel's clean record and emotional turmoil. The jury deliberated for 2 days. On a snowy afternoon, the verdict came, guilty of second-degree murder. Daniel was sentenced to 20 years, eligible for parole in 14. As he was led away, he looked at Evelyn, his eyes empty. She didn't meet his gaze. Clara faced charges for conspiracy, her fate uncertain. Evelyn, though not prosecuted, was a pariah, her life a shadow. As the courtroom emptied, Ellen clutched Caleb's photo, whispering, "I'm sorry." What had she uncovered that no one else knew? Months later, Willow Creek bore scars. Ellen moved away, her rose garden untended. Evelyn vanished, some saying she'd started over in a new state, others claiming she'd never escape her guilt. Laura, closing the case file, visited Caleb's grave, where a single white rose lay. Ellen's PI had shared a final detail. Caleb had planned to end the affair that day, his journal confessing his love for Evelyn but his resolve to free them both. He'd never gotten the chance. Laura drove home, the weight of the truth heavy. Betrayal had sparked the fire, but it was human frailty, Evelyn's longing, Daniel's pride, Clara's vengeance that let it burn. The suburb settled into uneasy quiet, but the echoes lingered. A neighbor found an old photo of the Carvers and Warrens at a block party, smiling, oblivious to the storm ahead. It was tucked away, a reminder of what was lost. For those who lived through it, the lesson was clear. Secrets, left to fester, could turn love to ash. And in Willow Creek, the ashes still fell. Well, have you ever heard of a case like this? Comment your thoughts. That's all for today. Thanks for watching. Catch you in the next one.